Well, as you can probably have guessed by the title, we're going to continue on with the SNES lot. If you remember from the first part, we went over the two that we could not successfully test during the pickup video because either it would not turn on or there was no display. This one is one that seemingly successfully worked, but we never opened it up or anything. So what we can do now is take it apart and see what it looks like inside. I have no idea if anyone's been inside of here at all. I doubt it, but we'll find out, I suppose. Actually, that screw's missing, so this was opened before. How unfortunate. Yeah, these posts are almost... Haha. R.I.P. Interesting. There we go. So the top shell is definitely 100% useless, but these pieces are still good, as are these. The eject mechanism should be good, a little dirty. I don't think that's yellowing. Yeah, that's just dirt, so. But inside, other than some cracked plastic and some broken screw mounts, looks relatively clean. I don't see anything out of the ordinary. Capacitors look like they're in good shape. Let's remove is this removable? It is not. So this is probably soldered on the whole connector. I don't believe this is the removable kind, which means that this is probably a later model. But let me verify. So if we look at this connector here, it has shielding all the way over. This one does not. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's not removable, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure which revision this is yet. It's under the shield. So what I'm going to do first is disassemble the power switch as well as removing the shield. Now, I don't know much about the differences between the revisions, but one of the reasons I wanted to open this one up is because I wanted to see what revision it is so that I can compare the three and see. So this is SNS CPU RGB01. Let me write that down real quick. I'm assuming this is an RGB model and I don't have to do any mods to keep the functionality or bring the functionality back or anything. Nope, it is not removable. So this is a later model SNES, more than likely. So, no, whatever, that's fine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go grab my iPad so I can look up the 3 different model numbers. Oh, actually, hang on a second. Not sure if it's coming through on camera, but there is some corrosion over here. Something was spilled in here and it hit the front end of the system board. Looks like we might have some repair work to do, at the very least some deep cleaning. So apologies if it's a little noisy in the background. It's warm again, and so the central air kicked on. I'm going to try to do my best to clean up the audio. But I found this little chart here on NES Dev forums. So there were basically 4 revisions of the SNES, I believe, of the original shell, not the redesign, but it doesn't really specify. However, this one here is obviously the SNS CPU RGB 01. This one here is the third revision, although there was also an 02, I believe. This is not a one chip because the two PPUs still exist. The other two SNESs that I've got include the SNS CPU GPM 01, which is a 1992 release. This is a 94 release, as well as the SHVC CPU 01, which is a launch edition SNES. So that's kind of cool. The launch edition SNES that I've got is the one that needs the replacement cartridge connector on it, if you recall from part 1. And other than that, it seems like the picture quality, depending on which revision you have, will be either better or worse. The one chip models apparently stripped out RGB, at least on the North American release of the console. And it should be simple enough to re-implement. You can go as basic, just adding some resistors in, I believe. Or you can put a RGB mod board on the bottom, solder into the spots that will then eventually bridge the RGB connections to the AV out, and then you're good to go. Not a super knowledgeable expert on the SNES tech from the technological standpoint, obviously, but that's what I can see. There are other differences. This being a later release has the eject label molded on there, whereas the earlier models have it printed on like so. Also, the launch edition of the SNES console had a plug-in module for the sound chips, whereas later revisions just had it integrated into the board. Not sure why that was. Maybe the sound chips were not ready in time, so Nintendo decided to just put a connector on there and then order everything from Sony so they can just plug it in and go from there. It's also possible that the final board design wasn't ready to go, so they did it that way too. Not sure. But this is concerning here, so let me finish taking this board out and get a closer look at everything to make sure that this isn't permanent damage. Because if it is, this will be out and it'll just be parted out. Alright, let's go about continuing the disassembly. I think I've only got a couple more screws, give or take, to remove. I've got a couple missing broken pieces here. And you can also see, I don't know if this is like an adhesive, but it's kind of yellowish compared to the rest of it. It's not yellowed though. I wonder if it doesn't seem to line up with the top half of the shell for anything, so probably adhesive, or it could even be whatever was spilled. So I'm not sure if it's showing up in camera well or not, but you can kind of see something here, some sort of liquid cola maybe. But the bottom half of the shell is in otherwise good shape. I'm definitely going to keep it. The other shells, unfortunately, are either destroyed or yellowed, although one of them, the top half, isn't quite as yellowed as the others, so I may try to retrobrite that one. We'll see. And the central are shut off, so hopefully it won't be as loud. I believe this should just remove. Yeah. Looks like it's in okay shape. I don't see anything spilled on here at all. Slight yellowing. I think I've got one that isn't yellowed. They should all be compatible with each other. So let me give it a quick cleaning just to see if it cleans easily or not. And if it does, great. If not, I need to do a little bit more work. I'm gonna spray some distilled vinegar just to try and clean up some of this corrosion here, and we'll get the other side as well too. I don't think any of the vias were damaged, fortunately. Maybe a couple here, but I don't think we'll have to worry too much. that sit for a little bit and then I'll clean it up. Actually, what I'll probably do is grab a brush, scrub it a little bit, and then clean it up with this, and then pour some IPA on there to clean up the vinegar. And so after about a half hour of scrubbing and all of that, I think it came out pretty well. The corrosion cleaned up fairly nicely. I want to retouch this ground plane here a little bit and double check some of these chips here. U8 and U9, some of the, I'm not sure if it's coming through on camera well, but they're a little bit dull, so I may need to touch them up with some solder. But overall, I'm happy with how clean it came out. But I still need to determine which board I want to keep. And even if I want to keep an original SNES, I keep going back and forth with it because I've got the Junior, which for me is going to be good enough. Plus, I've got the analog Super NT, so I don't really need another SNES, but we'll see. But yeah, this board came out nice and clean. I think it will do just fine, depending on whether or not I can find a shelf for it or not, or get the one that I've got here cleaned up and retro-brighted and all of that fun stuff. So as I said, the bottom half of the shell is in really good shape. It's dirty, obviously, it's got to be clean. You actually can see something was definitely spilled here. Not sure how well it's coming out across on camera, but there's definitely some stains there. So this just needs a basic cleaning. I don't want to do the normal soak clean that I do because I don't want this paper serial number to get messed up, so I'll probably just use like a cleaning cloth or something like that. Use a toothbrush in the grooves with the cloth like that, something along those lines. Probably should remove this so it doesn't potentially corrode, rust, etc. But that only takes care of the bottom half of the shell. The top half is going to be more difficult. Now I can remove this piece here and this piece here and everything, and the buttons, those should be good. The rest of this top shell is just lost cause. But the only other top shell I have is this one. And while it's not severely yellowed, it is, you can see a difference between the shell and the cartridge slot. Plus a little bit of paint here, although that's fairly easy to take care of. The inside is pretty pristine. There is a little bit of a chip here, unfortunately. Not much I can do about that, unless the box it came in has a little piece that just happens to fit, but I think that's probably overkill, although I probably will reinforce it with a little bit of glue just to keep it intact. But yeah, the rest of this should be in good shape, so I can probably just retro-bright it. We'll clean it first, retro-bright it, and then basically rebuild this thing. The screw holes all line up. But again, it depends on which board I want to keep, want to use, etc. This obviously will fit in here just fine. But if I decide to go with one of the others, will they fit? I'm pretty sure the mounts are virtually identical between all three, but I won't know until I try, right? So you go ahead off camera, get this cleaned up, get all this mechanism removed from here, get this clean so I can prepare it for retro-brighting. Alright, so it took way longer than I expected it to. Like I said, the bottom half of the shell was fine, it just needed to be cleaned a little bit. I think I did a good enough job. The top half of the shell, though, I did retro-bright it, but there's still a little bit of yellowing you can see. I don't know if it's showing up on camera at all. Maybe if I put the two halves together, get a better idea. You can kind of see the top is still a little bit more yellowed. Plus, it still has those chips in the front here. And in the back here as well. So here you got that chip there. And this one, I tried to add a little bit of glue just to hold it together, but it just won't take. I have to add a lot more. I'd have to add a lot more, unfortunately, because of the fact that this has this lip around it that goes over like that. There just wouldn't be enough room. It wouldn't close properly. So You'll just have to deal with that. But the rest of everything came out nice. This had to be retrobrighted. It looks fine. I also give it a cleaning. There's a little bit of rust on the shield, so I took care of that and then put some Rust-Oleum over it. Everything else just needed to be clean. No retrobrighting or anything. I did realize that the inner cartridge slot and the rest of this piece here is a little bit yellow, but it's hidden behind here, so I don't care. Here's all of these parts here. And then here's the board. I think the board is clean now and ready to go. So let's go ahead and reassemble everything again. So we obviously have to start with the bottom shell because, well, that's where everything connects to. And I did decide to keep this board with this shell because of the fact that the serial number is going to tie into the board. Not that it matters to me, but if there's any collectors out there that are looking for maybe this specific model, the RGB01, they're going to base it off of the serial number, and well, if they open it up and it's not that, they might be upset. So and there we have one mostly refurb SNES. Of course, we got to make sure it still works, make sure I didn't damage anything inside. So let me get it hooked up to the TV and try out some games. And there we go. Again, I only have one channel audio hooked up, so let me also try the Super Game Boy out. just to make sure it works on here. And we'll use Donkey Kong Land as a test. I have no reason to doubt that it won't, but let's verify, because this Super Game Boy, again, does use the extra connectors on the cartridge slot. Good. And it boots into Super Game Boy mode. No audio, though. So is there a compatibility issue with the Super Game Boy in this specific console, or did something break? Let's go back to the multi-cart. The multi-cart only uses the middle connector, so I can't really test anything. I just want to make sure that sound is still working again. Yeah, so it's still working. Let me grab another cart that uses all of the connectors. I think Super Mario RPG is one of them. All right, let's try Super Mario RPG. Boots up, that's good. And sound works, so there might be something up with the Super Game Boy. Let me try one more time. I'll try a different game too, just in case there's something wrong with Donkey Kong Land. Okay. Nope, there is no Game Boy audio. Interesting. I'll have to look that one up and see if there's a compatibility issue with this specific model, because I know the Super Game Boy has worked in the past, and I know that these Game Boy games work with sound, so interesting. If you guys have any clues or suggestions, drop them down in the comments below in the event that I can't find anything out. But if I do, I'll obviously record the information, or at least put a link in explaining why this is. But other than that, let's go ahead and wrap up this video and conclude it. So there's no compatibility issues with the Super Game Boy in this specific revision of the SNES. I tested the Super Game Boy out on a couple other consoles, the SNES Junior as well as the Analog Super NT, and I get the same results, no audio. So plan for a future repair video where I take a look and try to figure out what's going on. But for now, I don't know what to do with this thing. Like I said, I don't really have a need for it necessarily, and I may just want to try and sell it. Not going to get a ton of money for it because of the chip here, and I don't have the original power supply or AV cables. I only have one set that I need to keep for myself. I do have extra original controllers though, so that's cool. The other reason I don't know what to do with this, because I have these two boards as well, and I'm not sure what to do with those either. One of these two obviously is going to need the cartridge riser, and I can't seem to find just the riser itself, so I might have to just take one of these, desolder it, and put a replacement one on there that has to be soldered on. But if you notice on the Rev 1, we'll call it, the sound module is separate, and it has this little module disconnects, and I guess I don't know why that is. The other thing you can see is that there is a slight size difference between the two. Not much, but enough. So they get 1 out of 3 fully refurb, although all 3 do work, which is good to know. At the very least, maybe I can just sell these as spare parts, especially this one here, since I've got 2 components that can be sold along with this, as well as the cartridge, or the controller connector, and a few other little pieces. So, or I can try to house it in this nice translucent smoke-colored shell. There are some components that it doesn't come with, such as the buttons, eject mechanism, the cartridge slot itself, and the controller headers, obviously. Those will have to be salvaged from an SNES. I also picked up these stickers here to put on, just because of the fact that this mold doesn't have any sort of printing on it whatsoever. And I'm also thinking about doing a LED mod, changing out the red LED for a purple one. So keep an eye out for that video. It'll be sometime in the future, not exactly sure when. Yeah, that's basically it. Hopefully this was entertaining for you guys, if not somewhat informative. There we go. What you guys think of the video? If you liked it, thumbs up. If you didn't, thumbs down. Subscribe, don't. I do appreciate it if you take your time out of your day to watch the video, subscribe. But it's never an obligation. Other than that, that's it. Thanks all, and I'll catch you later.